Here's John Shannon from sunny, snowless Toronto. He made a point of telling us. How you doing, my friend?
Oh, Merry Christmas to you guys, too.
Yes, indeed.
We've got a blanket of snow for it. Let's see if it sticks around.
We look like
it's bloody
Buffalo.
cold
It's
here.
beautiful.
Yeah.
No, nothing's like Buffalo. I mean, and that's
Oh, my God.
that's one of the great things about living in Toronto. We're 60 miles north of Buffalo, and they get a blizzard, and we get nothing. So
That's crazy. Just crazy.
To watch the lake effect
lake effect.
snow with 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter on Saturday, and I'm sitting there watching it with a bunch of Bills fans. We're going, I don't think there's enough time in the game for it to accumulate. Come back from the next commercial break, and the next thing you know, it's accumulating on the field, and it's coming down in buckets. And you go, "My God, Buffalo! Does any place snow?"
I had dinner with Jack Armstrong last night, and Jack he's a season ticket holder with our with the Bills, and was at the game Saturday night, and he said it was the greatest game of the year, and part of the magic was the snow coming in the fourth quarter, and Buffalo fans just love it. They learn to enjoy it. It was the same thing in 2009 when we did the first official outdoor game for the National Hockey League with the Penguins and the Sabres. Nothing's different now.
Yeah, and as a TV guy, John, and we've talked about this for years on this show, you love the snow globe game, right? Like, it's just perfect at this time of year to get a game that looks like it's going on in a snow globe.
Well, but before we get to the Canucks, by the way, can Boston stop hosting the Winter Classic? Like, enough with Boston and the Winter Classic. It feels like it's just their event. Why are they in it every single year, it feels like?
Well, I think what happened this time around is that one of the networks said we need a high-profile team, and when you have a high-profile team that is prepared to sell them a home game, there's not very many that will, and the Bruins would be at the top of the list. The Rangers won't. You're not going to get a Ranger game out of MSG, so why not Boston? And let's face it, I think the whole concept of the Winter Classic, the hope was to create like a bowl game, a national event. And it's gone past that now, and now it's just a regional event. And so, what does it matter whether it's in Boston or wherever? No, it'll be fun at Fenway. It's two teams that play outdoors a lot, Pittsburgh and Boston. So we'll see what happens and see what the ratings are like, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. How about Fenway too? They have
and then next year will be Calgary, Edmonton at Commonwealth, and people won't be complaining about that. It'll see how much fun that is.
Boy, Fenway's now a multi-purpose venue there. College football, they're going to have hockey, and, of course, baseball in the spring there. Why won't the Rangers sell the league a game? Just
they
money?
make too much money at home.
Yeah.
It's all money. Yeah. And I don't mind telling stories out of school. In 2009, the Buffalo Sabres home gate was $900,000. And what the league has to do is guarantee them their regular home gate, and then take over the ticket sales. And so it was an easy sell at $900,000. The year we did it at Wrigley Field between the Red Wings and the Blackhawks, the Blackhawk numbers were not even $1 million for home gate because they were from the previous year, and they weren't selling out then. And so from that perspective, it was a perfect situation. Now, I mean, you during the time when the Hawks won those 3 cups, you wouldn't have been able to afford to get a home date out of the Blackhawks.
John, the Canucks lose on Saturday night. Winnipeg just comes in here and blows them out. Do losses hit different on a Saturday night, hockey night in Canada game? Because they've played a lot of stinkers here at home on Saturday nights.
That's a good question. I think there used to be pressure. I do think that at a time when there were limited amount of Saturday night games, but I don't think there should be now. I mean, there's a lot of Saturday night games, and whether even Canucks on the road on a Saturday night, I don't think it should be what it was, say, 15 years ago. But you're right. They for every time they put stuff together, it's 2 steps forward, then 1 or 2 or maybe Saturday 3 steps back.
It's not a rarity, the Saturday night game, but I do think it's our It's our availability on a Saturday night to watch a game. I think everybody knows that more people sit down and watch games. So I think there is, it's losing in front of 5,000 people, losing in front of 20,000 people, for example. It feels like it's a bigger audience, even though you could theoretically have been watching that Monday night game as well.
It's funny. I if you were talking about doing direct numbers, ratings, and I can't speak for the last 4 or 5 years, but I would tell you that on a Saturday night, the amount of people that would watch on a Thursday night for Vancouver at home would be about the same as a Saturday night. Mm-hmm. Regional rivalries don't mean very much about things like that. So that to me. If there's going to be 325,000 to 400,000 people watching British Columbia watch on a Saturday night, they would watch on a Thursday too.
Patrick Alvin joined the After Hours crew. Says the team is not interested in a rebuild. We're probably going to get through today without a Bo Horvat trade and the NHL roster freeze. You tell me, what are you hearing on the Horvat file, and do you think there's a hockey trade out there for them to make?
Well, that's a really key question of this, and what you have to wonder, Matty, is what team would be prepared to give a quality trade, whether it's a first round pick, a prospect, maybe even more than that, or another draft pick, to talk to a guy for 2 months, and so I think what we're wondering now is there a possibility of, we saw Matthew Tkachuk go between Calgary to Florida on a sign and trade. Would Jim Rutherford or Patrick Alvin allow a team to talk to Newport Sports and Bo Horvat about an extension if they could get the trade they want? Are we looking more at, or did the Canucks do the sign and trade on behalf of the club? That becomes a real issue. I'm not sure there are teams out there that are willing to do it for just, a king's ransom for short-term remedy. And I'm not sure there's teams out there.
Yep. And as we've talked about, even with a good contract like Horvat, the number of teams that can just flat take on a $5 million plus salary, few and far between, perhaps more by the deadline, but we shall see. Another jersey hit the ice, John, on Saturday night. One of the blogs here talked about the Canucks lead the league in jerseys that have hit the ice here from protesting fans. It was a thing for the Canucks last year. They jumped pretty quickly after jerseys hit the ice on a bad loss to Pittsburgh, and the next thing you know, Benning and Travis Green were out. The Oilers, needless to say, had their travails with jerseys hitting the ice. Do you think it affects management and ownership? I mean, the hockey jersey and the crest is supposed to be so sacred, right? Do you think that affects management and ownership and any kind of decision-making or at least discourse?
It might affect some. I don't think it'll affect Jim Rutherford. I think that Jim is pretty staunch. I think he's pretty set in the route that he wants to take for this team. And so I guess my answer in the end is no, not for the Vancouver Canuck management team. I don't think that that's a factor. I think that Jim will put in place what he thinks is the right thing for this organization, both in the short term and in the long term.
Do you think that ownership is making some of these decisions at all, or do you think this is all Jim and Patrick here?
Listen, it would be silly for me to sit here and suggest that Francesco Aquilini hasn't talked to Jim Rutherford. But I do think that, part of what's in place is that this is Jim Rutherford's hockey operations group. And one of the reasons he left Pittsburgh, and people don't talk about it very often, one of the reasons he left Pittsburgh is he felt people were meddling. And so he quickly said he wanted out. And I think he assured himself anywhere he went, he would have full control. And I think that's what he has. I think he has full control.
The answer we keep hearing from the last administration and this one too is it's just so hard to make a trade. And while I think that people are sympathetic of that to a point, ultimately other teams are making trades, And ultimately, that's the only way that this team moves forward right now is a change
Well,
of some
who else
sort.
is making trades? Who else is making trades?
Well, we just talked.
I'm not.
We just
I
talked
don't
about the
know who else
Huberdeau
is
trade.
making big trades.
Well, the Huberdeau trade was a huge one.
Oh no, but that was off season. That was off season.
Okay.
If you ask me in July, I might give you a different answer. But I think one of the issues that we're having in the NHL is and I feel for my buddies Friedman and Merrick on Saturday nights with their insider segment, is there's not, other than Elliott talking about the Canucks every once in a while, there isn't much movement with players during the season right now because of the flat cap and because of contracts. And it's, as you well know, and both of you were part of it, 10 years ago, talking about trades was a cottage industry in the National Hockey League. And it just doesn't exist anymore during the regular season.
So the options are just play out the season, just as it is.
Well, I think that then the challenge becomes you can't afford to let Horvat go for nothing if he's decided he doesn't want to sign, or if you know the number, you'll never reach the same number. I think there's a real belief on both sides that Bo Horvat will not be a Vancouver Canuck after the trade deadline. I think both sides believe that, and they're going to try to facilitate it. But it doesn't mean it's going to happen. It doesn't mean it's easy. And it goes back to that challenge is are you going to take 50 cents on the dollar on Bo? If you're Jim Rutherford and Patrick Levine, I'm not sure they would do that.
That's 50 more cents than zero, right? That's 50 more cents than zero.
But you're not wrong. So that's why, what's the trade deadline? March 3rd?
Yeah.
That's why here we are in December. We still have, which is one of the reasons I think that darn, the idea of the press release from the Horvat side was saying, I'm done talking about it. At least there'll be some peace of mind for a couple of months without people asking him.
Elias Pettersson untouchable. Quinn Hughes not. Did that get your curiosity up?
A little bit when you consider again, but I think that there's lots of pre-existing conditions lots of us have lived by because remember they held out together, they got their contracts done together, and people rave about what a role Quinn Hughes has on this team from a defensive perspective. But at the same time, you have to wonder again what assets work to be sold on this organization in order to improve the team overall. I might even be surprised to suggest, and call me silly, that there are any untouchables on this team. And I love Pettersson, love the way he plays. But I like Bo Horvat too. So it's one of those ones where you have to start somewhere, and whether it's Quinn Hughes or Elias Pettersson or JT Miller or the next one, the next discussion is going to be how they get Kuzmenko under the cap too next summers. There's lots of things going through everyone's mind at this point.
Yeah. John, marvelous stuff. We are off next week for the holidays and the Monday following, actually, because it's the New Year's Day stats. So, my friend, wish you a Merry and a Happy, and we'll catch up in 2023.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah to everybody who's in the midst of lighting the menorah this week, and we will see you next year.